Alright, so today we're going to be talking about the Aurora Borealis and the Aurora Australis. So basically, Aurora Borealis means, Aurora means sunrise, and Borealis means wind, and the Aurora Borealis is often referred to as the Northern Lights. The Aurora Borealis takes place in the Northern Hemisphere, while the Aurora Australis takes place in the Southern Hemisphere. So what is the aurora? So basically it's when charged particles escape sunspots, and then sometimes they're propelled by mass injections, and then these particles are then carried away from the sun by solar winds between speeds of 500 kilometers a second to 1,000 kilometers a second, and then if the particles get close enough, they're eventually pulled into Earth's magnetic sphere and they cause the aurora. So depending on the altitude of the nitrogen or oxygen, it will depict the color of the aurora. So purple means the nitrogen is above 96 kilometers, and the blue means that nitrogen is below 96 kilometers. Red means that oxygen is above 240 kilometers in altitude, while the green means that oxygen is below 240 kilometers in altitude. So there are also different formations. So there's diffuse, means that like what we see is there's no defined edges, so it's kind of a blur, versus the structured ones where, as you can see in the picture, there's clearly defined edges in the patterns. Then you have like an Arctic, the arc, which is kind of more like a circle, or as you can see, like an arc. Then we have bands, which is often what people think of when they think of the Aurora Borealis, and then you have pillars, and then the most rare one, which is the corona, which is when you're standing directly beneath the pillars, that's what you'd see. So these two charts kind of represent where you can actually see the Aurora Borealis. So this is for the northern hemisphere on the left, and the obviously southern hemisphere on the right, and where you would actually be able to see these. This is kind of a chart in the United States where you would see them and what the magnetic latitude is at each location. This chart then represents the magnetic latitude and the KP index and what they need to be in order for you to actually view these. So the best time to actually view the Aurora Borealis is between 5 p.m. and 2 a.m. and most of the displays only last a few minutes and they can disappear and then reappear. Some last between 15 and 30 minutes, and then rarely, but sometimes, if the geomagnetic storm is strong enough, it can even last for several hours. Oftentimes inside these aurora ovals, 80% of nights you can actually see these, but the peak times are definitely in fall and spring, specifically September and March, and areas outside the aurora ovals may have to wait for the geomagnetic storms in the aurora to be much stronger, and the next possible chance of this is in 2024. So because the geomagnetic is so strong, it can also have effects on Earth, even though they're taking place hundreds of kilometers up Earth's surface. The electric current can still reach the ground, so often this can affect power, oil and gas pipelines, computer networks, and the one that I find most interesting is iCloud systems. So there have been a few impacts where we've actually seen this happen, specifically in 1989 when it caused power outages in Quebec and the United States and New Jersey, in 2003 when it caused airline rerouting, space instruments to malfunction, and power outages in Sweden, and then in 2016 President Obama signed an executive order requiring a development program if we are affected by a geomagnetic storm. This also has a major economic impact, including tourism, and it's a very big growing industry. In 2000 was the first company that began operating, and now in 2019 there's 65 companies operating, And the Icelandic tourism has increased 300% since 2000, when Iceland first began offering tourism. The aurora is also very important to indigenous people. In Australia, the indigenous people often believe that these lights that they saw were gods dancing overhead. While here in the northern hemisphere, the indigenous people often believe that it was their spirits or dead ancestors that they were seeing. The Mandan tribe believed that the aurora was warriors boiling their enemies, while the Makah tribe believed that the aurora were fires in the north, and they were boiling whale blubber. And then the Finnmark region believed that the aurora was foxes lighting up the sky with their bright fur coats, while Scotland believed that they were merry dancers in the sky. So each indigenous tribe kind of had their own beliefs as to what these lights that they were seeing were. It even dates back to ancient history, with the Greeks believing that it was the sister of Aurora, Helios and Selene, who were racing across the sky to warn her sisters of dawn's approach. The ancient Chinese believed that it was fire breath of dragons fighting a war between good and evil. The Japanese believed a child conceived under Aurora would be blessed with good looks, intellect, and good fortune. And the Romans believed that Aurora was the goddess of dawn. And that is the end of our presentation. Thank you for your time.